Hi, I'm Chris Masters, President of Biovante.
I'm Phillip Davis, Director of Field Research.
Today we want to discuss with you three things. That's going to be our organization, our products and programs, and then some of the results that we're seeing up to this point. Phillip, why don't you just tell us a little bit about how you got started with Biovante?
Well, Chris, a friend of mine in 2010 called me and suggested I use one of the biologicals from Biovante. Of course, a typical farmer, researcher, I was somewhat concerned about the validity of the product. I had basically tested and did a lot of research on some biologicals, and most of them I'd had mixed results with. So I kind of held the guy off, and he was very persistent, and he kept telling me, he said, this product's different.
How many times have you heard that, right?
Well, Chris, that's a typical response to any salesperson that comes into your driveway. They're wanting to tell you that they're different from the last guy that just left.
You know, and that's the thing, we get into this in the ag market as a whole, there's now becoming more interest into the biologicals, and up to this point there's been the discussion of which ones work, what bacteria strand, which kind of the microorganisms are there, and that's been hard for the farmer to really grasp and take in, because it seems like everybody has their own source of bacteria, their own source of microorganisms, and so it leaves a somewhat for the farmer, should I use this? And even there's some products that you have to use with certain timing, certain water, so there's a lot of things that kind of constrict the farmer of using that product, and this was really your introduction to us, and it really wasn't what you would call ideal growing conditions, but you were able to see 12% and then 15%. So from that, you actually got the results that year, and so that obviously led you to come and say, hey, maybe there's more to this, what can we do? So how did you develop and how did you come into the company to begin work with us?
In December of 2010, one of the neat things that happened in 2011, we set a new state record in Virginia that went 429 bushels.
Sure. The company started in 2009, and we started the company just on testing premises only. We wanted to come into the market with a viable, reliable product, so we took the biological product and we began to test it with, at that time, some Beck seed hybrids. They began to do our testing. So we started to develop the product, put it into different variable rate applications, timing methods, and we really wanted to have a good foundation for those that would soon come in the future to use the product. We wanted to make sure that the numbers were there, it was viable, return on investment for the grower. So we started that in 2009. We actually didn't really begin to solicit or market sales until 2012. And it was during that time period that we were doing some of our testing, our plot work, getting some results through some independent organizations, seed business, plot work that was being done, that we came into connection with Phillip. Phillip, before you came to us, what's some of the history? How long you been in the industry? What have you been doing prior to this? What led you to where you're at now?
Well, Chris, I've always been in agriculture. I grew up on a farm there in North Carolina. I was very fortunate to grow up on a family farm. In 1998, I got an offer to do research with a Midwest-based company, and I worked with them for 6 years. At the end of that 6 years, and at the end of the season in 2003, I kind of took a sabbatical and went back to North Carolina. Kind of kept a few of my clients that I had worked with during that time period. And then in 2010, when I got the call about the biological product, nitrogen-fixing bacteria, it kind of tweaked my interest again and kind of got me excited again about working and trying to help producers achieve a better profit
So you've
margin.
been in the industry. You've seen products come, you've seen products go, you've seen companies come, you've seen companies go, and obviously there's been something that's gotten a hold of you with this product and with the products in general to make you want to, we can take this, we can offer this to growers. Is that correct?
That's true, Chris, and a lot of the producers that I work with these are of the upper echelon, I guess you would say.
Like maybe progressive. They're really progressive.
Very progressive and very open-minded, and they're wanting to to actually leave their farm in better shape for their children
Sure.
than they actually when they stepped onto it, or when they started working in the industry.
Right.
So they're very environmentally conscious, and they're wanting to really do a good job and be a good steward of the environment.
And you know, the thing about it is we have globally, we're a world we can replicate technology, we can replicate many things, we can grow new advancements in technology. And really the farming industry, we can't grow more soil. I mean, what God has given us, we have to take care of. And that's where it goes back to a biological, something that can replenish the soil, rejuvenate the life back to the soil. And with the demands that's going on with not only world production, but here in the United States domestically, we're looking at cost. The markets are holding pretty good right now. We're looking at higher yields being produced. So that's more stress that's going to be applied to the soil. So it's important to not only replenish the NP and the K and the other nutrients, but it's also putting a strain upon what was there to begin with that God started this whole thing out with, and that's the true life. That's biologicals, microorganisms. So as a company, as a whole, our foundation was built upon the biologicals, which is the BioGold and the BioRed. Since that time, Phillip came in and made some suggestions, and we've kind of put our heads together as a corporation and we began to develop the product portfolio that we have now. And we feel that we are able to introduce these technologies at certain given points and somewhat maximize the genetics of that plant. No matter if it's DeKalb or if it's Pioneer or another hybrid, really makes no difference. But first and foremost, the focus is on the soil. What happens in the soil with the biologicals comes out through our yield, through our health, our plant health, and then we're able to also fine-tune the system, so to say, with some of the other products, the Micro 8, the Biomate,
Right.
the Assist 45. And you know as much as I know, Phillip, I mean, you've been in this a long time. There's never an ideal growing season.
No.
Never is. And so talk a little bit about some of the products. And you know, we had the drought in 2012. Many growers experienced a lost yield, some of them filing insurance claims, things like that. Some of them didn't even have insurance.
Right.
So what are some things that you've seen in the history, and then now you were involved in 2012, what were some of the products that you put into place that you were able to offer that grower and yourself, you as a grower, to be able to not lose as much yield, but still be able to maintain a profitable year?
Well, Chris, one of the most valuable resources on any farm, and that's the soil itself. And so with us working with that soil, we're actually replenishing.
Sure.
And I use the word a lot that we're remediating that soil on that farm, and we're taking it more back to a biological state.
But you know this too, and not mean to stop you, but what are some of those practices though that are getting to an imbalance? What are some of the things that growers have initially been doing that, you know, at the time it didn't seem like harm, but what are some of those things that you've seen in the industry that's now, hey, we've got to begin to address some of these issues that what we thought was okay is probably not? What are some of the things that you've seen?
Well, Chris, when you read some of the articles in some of mainstream agriculture, I mean, I was reading one last night of showing where a lot of basically the chemicals, pesticides, the fertilizers that we've been using are high salt content. Those type things are really having a detrimental effect on the biology of the soil. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying, again, to remediate that with some of the technology that we're working with. And one of the things we're finding out, Chris, is in 2012, really the first year kind of out of the gate.
Which really, as a company, if you're going to come out with some products in a drought year, is not really the best year to start.
But we saw some very positive results
Mm-hmm.
in 2012. But let's step back to 2011. Really, when I say the first year that we got the products out in an experimental capacity as a company, there in Virginia, one of the farms we work on set a new state record for them was 429 bushels. One of the most critical components of that, Chris, and we're finding out, is we have to start with the seed. And Biovante in 2011 developed a new seed treatment for corn. Also works on any grass or legume. And we saw phenomenal increases in yield by starting with the seed. And I think the structure that we've come to as a company is starting, of course, with the seed.
Sure.
Then we're working with the soil. We've been talking about soil remediation, and then working into the plant. So the new product that the company brought out in 2011 was Pentalex.
Right.
And we're finding out that that is a very critical part of that germination process. And Chris, why don't you just kind of tell what you saw and what the customer base and how the Pentalex actually works?
Well, you know, the good thing about the Pentalex is not dependent upon necessarily the seed genetic or the hybrid that we're dealing with. The important thing about that is that the seed companies have done a great job about packing that seed with certain characteristics. We know that there's racehorse hybrids, there's workhorse hybrids, there's flex hybrids. So they've done a great job about putting characteristics into that seed that as a grower you want to use, you want to see on your farm. That's why you do the diversity of planting different hybrids, so that way in different scenarios you're not putting yourself in a compromising position with one full hybrid. And so the thing about the Pentalex that is unique about this is that we're going to enhance and bring those characteristics out in that seed. A good thing is, you know, if you're going to plant 34,000, 36,000 on corn, cotton, you're going to put out a certain X amount of seeds per acre on cotton. You want to make sure that you can get that seed out of the ground. It makes you no money, obviously, if you're just dealing with seeds that you plant and don't get a return on. So what the Pentalex Aqua will do is, as you treat that onto your seed, you're actually going to begin to bring those characteristics out. You're going to work with vigor, germination, uniform emergence. I mean, that's so important. Everybody hears about this, having the seed coming out of the ground at the exact as close amount of time as all of them coming out of the ground together. That's going to help in so many ways. It's going to reduce the stress upon that plant and allow those root systems to evenly develop and evenly grow, pull moisture, pull nutrients into that plant.
The Midwest, I've had guys in the Deep South, well, how do I get it on the seed? In one particular instance, early March of 2013, I had a consultant in Illinois, and he kind of foo-fooed the idea of the Pentalex.
What's the importance, you know?
How's that little bit of energy, as you call it? That's what I said, it's energy for the seed. How's that really going to affect the seed when we're putting out here, as you say, anywhere from 32 to 36,000? And I said, just trust me. And so it was kind of interesting. We set up 2 Pro boxes, one empty. And so what we did, we treated half of a Pro box and put it through he had the cement mixer. It was an old hobby cement mixer. We treated it, put it in half of the Pro box over here treated. Well, he did replications. We split a 24-row planter, put half of that Pro box in one side of the central field planter and the other half in the other. We did replicated work on those farms, saw a very positive increase. So it's got him somewhat excited. So it is, you know, as anyone, as you face changes, and you know, some of the world champion corn growers of the past have used this terminology. I know Francis Childs has said this. David Hooler quotes Francis Childs quite a bit on this, that you have to be willing to change. The definition of insanity is keep doing what you're doing while expecting different results. And so we have to kind of shift these producers that we're working with, introduce a new concept to them. So treating the seed is a new concept to a lot of these things.
And you know, and that's something that we look at and we hear from growers is, I'm willing to make a change, but within a confined, controlled setting. And there's so many options now out there coming from different organizations, different companies. Everybody's trying to push this product, that product. And you know, we're kind of localized as far as I say, a smaller product portfolio. You won't find that our company has 20 or 28, 30 products. We really feel like we've got a niche to the product line that we have. The only place that you're going to find this technology is from Biovante. And so that's another key thing. You're dealing with a company that we have direct control over our products. And through the distribution, whether that be through direct sales to you as a grower or through some of the dealers that we've already existed and set up, you can get these technologies this way and work with our product portfolio and work with us and we can begin to work together and grow some of these yields. Look at some of the situations that are happening on your farm and see if there's a way that we can parallel these things and partner together and work together. Where do you think the biologicals are headed in the near future?
Well, I think one of the things, Chris, and as we've been achieving these higher yields on the farms that we're working with, is constantly the guys now that have been 3 years on our program,
Sure.
I hear them tell me my farm has changed. My soil is changing. They're seeing it on the yield monitor and the combine. They're seeing more of a consistent yield. They don't see the very low dips and the really highs.
Sure.
It's a more consistent, even yield across the board, and they're saying my farm's changing. And Chris, what we're doing is we're changing that with products like the BioRed, the Assist 45, the BioFlex, the BioMate, the products in our product line, is we're actually putting all of this in to a package here for that farmer to use, where we're rejuvenating. Rejuvenating, reclamation, or whatever you want to say. We're rejuvenating that biological activity there. That's when they plowed out the Great Plains. I mean, typically what a farmer would do is he would plow out an area, he would farm it for 3 to 5 years, and he'd say, well, this is played out. That's the
3 to 5 years.
Yeah, 3 to 5 years. This one's played out, so they would relocate and plow out new prairie. So what they were doing is they were benefiting from that biological life that was there naturally. So what we're trying to do as a company, Chris, is we're trying to provide for that farmer, that producer, that same biological activity that is there in nature.
And it's going to take time.
It will.
You know, and the thing about it is with the biologicals, a true biological, if somebody comes to you and begins to say, well, here's a biological we want to offer you, and this is something that you're going to see, a true biological in the sake of replenishing and rejuvenating the soil, it's going to take time. Yes, you could go and you could find a mycorrhiza fungi, you could find a rhizobium bacteria, Azotobacter bacteria, and implement that into your program, and yes, let's say you will find some results the first year. But the fact of the matter is, we know that it's a family living in the soil. We know that there's multiple things having to work together cohesively in the soil. We're looking at the 5 functional categories in the soil. That's the actinomycetes, algae, bacteria, fungi, and protozoa. Now, with those groups, you have to have exponential amounts of pounds per acre to get all of those to work together. And whenever we talk about some of the imbalance that's occurring in the farming industry, no longer do guys have farms for 3 to 5 years. It's been in their family for 100 years, 50 years, 70 years. So, you know, the thing about it is you don't want to sell that farm. It's something that's been in your family for a long time. You want to make sure that's going to be there for the next 100 years, for your child, for your grandchildren. Because people have to eat. And this world is going to be dependent upon food.
Right.
And so with the BioGold, the BioRed, the Assist 45, the BioMate, we're providing life in the form of biologicals, true biologicals, 100% aerobic and anaerobic microorganisms. These are certified organic. Our certifier is the BCS OKO out of Germany. They meet the stipulations under the USDA, the NOP, the JAS, and the EU. And we know that there's interest, some growers use the OMRI certification, and that's a possibility that we can look into that certification as well. But we're not strictly just selling ourselves on the organic side of things. You know, that the fact of the matter is it's going to take a mixture. It's going to take an understanding of what it takes to get there. You know, we're looking at the soil, and the soil dictates everything. As a painter would paint a beautiful painting, he has to have a canvas. He has to start with something that's blank. And so here we are, we're working with a farmer. We don't know your history. We don't know where the farm's been in. We don't know what the tillage practices were, whether you're conventional tillage, no-till, strip-till. We don't know how much stress has been put on that farm. We don't know the history of the fertilizer inputs that been put onto that farm, as well as the pesticide applications. So we're coming in and we're going to work with you, and we ask that you as a grower, if you begin to work with these biologicals, give us 3 years to work with you. And generally after that 3 years, you hear what Phillip was referring to. Their soils respond differently. The plant responds differently. I mean, I had a gentleman the second year after using the product said that he could tell a difference in driving over the field. As strange as that is, it felt different. It felt airy. It felt like there was some substance that wasn't there before. It didn't feel as hard. The year that the drought came in central Indiana, we had a gentleman that had been using the product for 3 years. While his neighbors were harvesting 20 and 40 bushel corn, he was harvesting over 100 bushel corn, 140 bushel corn. And the farmers look around and say, well, what's so special about you? What have you done that's so special? And the fact of the matter is, he'd been on a regimen of a program of a true biological. We want to build these families, the actinomycetes, the algae bacteria, the fungi, the protozoa. We want to build those. We don't want to just focus on one. We don't just want to find a bacteria and just say, hey, use this one bacteria. We don't want to find just a nematode, use this one nematode, use this one fungi. Because it's going to consist of multiple things working together. If I want something done properly, I can do a lot on my own, but if I want it to grow and develop and produce more, I call in other people. And so we have to work together, and that's the same thing that happens in the soil. The soil is a living organism, and the imbalance that's taking now into the farming industry is the fact that more and more growers are saying, I'm just hitting a plateau, I'm hitting a ceiling, and I just don't know what it is. I look at my soil reports and I do everything. I adjust my NPK and I adjust my micronutrients. I'm not doing anything. I went to a cover crop. I'm finding areas to help my farming practice, but it just doesn't seem like I'm getting to those large yields that I'm wanting to. And we all know, going back to what the seed is, we know that you've been in this for a while and you've seen it. Has seed, the same genetic, been here from 10 years ago?
Oh, no.
Did it cost the same per bag? By no means. No. Just when you get comfortable with a hybrid, it seems like they're switching it up or something else is coming out. So we have to be diverse in the ability to help you as a grower. And that's where it's going to start, at the soil. And so looking at the biologicals, we feel like we really have a good product, a good technology that is going to work for you for the generations to come, for the future ahead. We have the ability with the biologicals over a period of time to work with you as a grower and begin to reduce some of those dependencies upon the high inputs of fertilizer. Now, we're not saying work with us and we can reduce it the first year by 50%. That would be a fool of us to come in and begin to do that. What we want to do is to work with you, and then over time we can begin to lose some of that dependency upon those high input numbers or whatever they might be. So the biologicals are going to begin to rejuvenate the soil, replenish the soil, but they're also going to begin to build the NPK values that are in your soil, the poundage. They're going to begin to build the amount of microbial biomass that's needed in the soil to sustain years and years and years of farming and the industry that we need, food production as a whole. So, there's some things that we may not see right now that are beneficial, but as time progresses, 2 to 3 years, 4 to 5 years down the road, and let's just say by some strange reason the government comes or the state legislation comes and says, farmer, you're going to have to cut your nitrogen inputs by 20%, by 30%. Now, if we were to do that today, a lot of guys would be shocked. They wouldn't know what to do. But by implementing a product such as BioGold, BioRed, Assist 45, these biologicals that Biovante has and has to offer, we have some data behind us. We have some yields behind us. We have some history behind us. Even though that we're younger as far as introducing the products to as growers, we do have a lot of history. And some of the history is working with Beck's hybrids. Beck's hybrids, we started testing with them in 2009. We now have 5 years worth of data that is beneficial, positive data. I'm not talking about some type of data that is skewed or biased. We had no dealings whatsoever with this testing. They took the product, they worked with it, and we got the data at the end of the year. 5 years worth of positive testing. So Phillip, outside of the Pentalex, the biologicals, we have the Micro-8, we have the Biomate, we have the Elixir, the fungicide. Looking at some of the programs, you have growers that come and they say, well, I rent my land, I lease my land, I'm on a cash rent basis. Some guys own their own farms. What are some ways that we as a company can go in and offer these growers who say, what, I just don't want to spend too much, but I want to make sure I'm obviously getting the bang for my buck. What is a way, whether it be small scale, large scale, in those areas that we can come in and begin to work with the grower?
Well, Chris, one of the most valuable tools I think that any producer can use right now, and that's foliar feeding.
Sure.
Because what you're doing is you're addressing the needs of that plant during that critical growth stage. And you've mentioned the Bio 8 or the Micro 8 Plus. And the Micro 8 Plus is very critical at certain stages of any plant's development. And we found that, and we found foliar feeding that has been very critical in achieving some of these higher yields, higher quality. Of course, the Assist 45, it forms as a catalyst and as an energy source for that plant, so foliar feeding it. So those type things, and getting a producer to be open-minded to going out there after he plants a crop, addressing that crop's needs at these critical growth stages has been very beneficial for the producers that we've been working with.
And it's not something that we're telling them to do extra. You know, if a grower comes and says, Phillip, you know, I'm only going to go across this field one time, or I'm going to go across this field 2 times, you can put something together, we can put something together that works with their system, works with what they're doing. So that way they're not having to waste an extra trip if they don't feel like they're wasting it, correct?
That's correct, Chris. But I do want to emphasize that there is critical growth stages for these guys that are achieving these maximum yields. They're out there working with that plant. You are correct when some guys will say, well, give me the first step. And so we'll do step 1 or you know, program 101. Those type things, and if a guy says, well, take me to the next level after step 1, and so some farmers and some producers I work with, you know, they're a touch and feel.
Advancement, they want to be able to advance.
You know, they're a touch and feel. They want to experience it. Then they'll go to the next level and for the next growing season. So we have programs. You and I both do that we work with.
And you know, the thing about what we did with that is we wanted to be able to come to a grower and start him in something and say, you know, with this plan, with this program, you're here. After that year, he sees some results, he sees some benefits, then he says, you know what, I saw a great return on investment. Now where can I go from here? So there has to be a starting point. And you know that with your testing work, the field work that you do, you know, if a guy never has anything to check it against or to find, hey, what did I achieve by doing this, there has to be have a starting point. You have to be able to check it and see where you went from. So, you know, you can't just necessarily put a blanket out there and just put it on every acre. We want to see what we're going to be able to improve, increase.
You made a very valid point, Chris. Any producers that we work with, we want to qualify and quantify actually the product on their farm to see what type of return on investment they get. You know, if a guy just puts it out there and he doesn't watch it, doesn't monitor it, he doesn't really know if it's going to work or not. So we're really looking for the guys that are, when I say hungry, they're hungry for taking their farm to the level that they're currently at, up the next rung on the ladder, so to speak.
Having the ability to grow, where we started with David, let's talk about him a little bit. Where we started with David, the very first year in 2011, and then now he's been able to advance to here we are in 2013, setting this phenomenal state record, national record of 454 bushels. You've worked with David for multiple years. Kind of tell us, in 2013, what was some of the products, what was some of the applications? You talked about the growth stages, these critical growth stages. Tell us, tell the viewer a little bit about what you saw and how you begin to able to take the Biovante products and allow them to work for David.
Well, Chris, I have to go back a little bit in history because I've worked with David for 14 years, 14 crops. In 2006, we found a very critical stage in production. And I'm going to allude to that in a minute, but in 2011, when we started working with David, was with the Pentalex and also the Bio Red. So really the first stage of any producer I like to go in and work with is starting with that seed and the Pentalex. We also work with the biologicals, and those can be placed in the 2x2 starters. They can be placed broadcast. Some of the biologicals that we're using, like Assist 45, actually is shown to chelate the phosphates. So in starter fertilizer, it helps keep them more available.
And this is something you're not just saying off the cuff. This is something David ran because, you know, when we introduced the Assist 45, he said, hey, if I'm going to use this, I want to make sure my dollar is being well spent. And he actually ran multiple replications.
He sure did.
To prove the fact that putting the Assist in the row with his fertilizer brought him, that year was a 3 bushel increase, which for a $1.22 investment to obtain 3 bushels worth of corn is a phenomenal return on investment. So continue, go ahead.
So we're doing things like that. We found out a critical growth stage is at V3, and we found out putting our micronutrients out there at V3 is very critical.
Okay.
Because that's when we're developing the ear shoot. That's where we developed a Micro 8 Plus.
Sure.
It's a very unique product that's on the market right now.
Now, when a grower gets Micro 8 Plus, what do they get? What physically, it's a dry material, right?
It's a dry material. We chose, Chris, you and I talked about this.
Sure.
We chose the benefit of not shipping water.
Right.
We want them to basically use their own water. It's more economical for them to use their own water than for us to ship water.
Big
to them.
savings.
So we came with a dry product. It's water dispersible, will be easily dissolved in any solution, whether it be UAN or starter fertilizer, or any foliar fertilizer. So it's very economical to use.
So they'll get it like a 20-pound, it's a 20-pound bag, and then the rates will be adjusted to half a pound, quarter of a pound, depending upon
right,
whatever that might
and
be.
even 2 pounds in some instances. We've used 2 pounds per acre. So that's a critical stage at V3.
Sure.
Then at V4, we come back with our Assist 45. Again, we're creating energy. Our infusion product, which is another micronutrient product from
Sure.
sea minerals.
Right.
And we're putting those on at V4. Then we come back at V5 and we do a combination of the Micro 8, more fertilizer at that time, with also the Assist 45. And we've got a new technology we're working with right now is encapsulated silica that we're finding huge benefits out of.
And we haven't talked about the Insight so much, but the silica product. And really, the silica product is taking not only what a grower has invested up to that point, because that's a 2-step application. They're doing a pre-plant application, then they're doing a post-emerge application. And that's really taking, all the adjustments that's been made to the NPK, to the micronutrients. From a soil perspective, that pre-plant application is actually pulling those and making those flowable and usable in the soil, so that way when V3, V4, V5, 6 applications come about, that plant can easily bring those nutrients into the root system. And then by the time we get into the post-emerge application, we're really protecting the internal parts of that plant, but we're also making not only what we're putting out much more efficient. And by efficient would be whether it were the herbicide. Not to get off track here, but you had some instances in 2007 or 2013 where you put the Insight in with some herbicides and had dramatic weed control. We'll come back to David, but real quick, tell us a little bit about what happened with the Insight.
Well, the Insight in cotton, we use the Insight with basically Gramoxone and Prowl is under the shielded sprayer in cotton. And the producer called the gentleman I'm working with and said, "You guys need to get down here and take some pictures." He says, "I've never had weed control on my turn rows." He said, "We've always had a huge problem with weed control."
Right.
And so we had put the Insight in there, the silica, and so we saw better activity out of a herbicide.
And generally, because by the time the plant grows, you have that canopy, it cuts out the sun, cuts out the weeds, and usually the end of the rows are just a forage of just weeds.
Because of the turning with the sprays
Sure.
and all of this, they basically run over a lot of the inrows, so you're destroying your canopy. But we still had excellent weed control.
So there again, putting the Insight in, it was actually helping the efficiency of what other products were in the solution. So going back to David, now we're up to V6. We're doing a foliar application at V6. How does it continue from there?
Well, V6, then he does another foliar application at V9. And V12, and then the neat thing about these products is we can fertigate.
Okay.
So we can put them through center pivots, and so we did several things through the center pivots on his farm, and also with the helicopter at fungicide applications.
Okay.
Chris, one of the things that's really neat about our biologicals compared to some of the other biologicals that I've used in the past is our encapsulation process. We can go in with a lot of different chemistries, and yet our biologicals are still protected.
Sure.
So we're still getting a really good response by going in with these other chemistries. pesticides, herbicides, those type of things that we can go in with our biologicals and still be a huge benefit to that plant.
Sure. So, David's been using the BioRed and he's been using the seed treatment for a while. Moving forward, do you feel like there's still we still haven't learned everything? Do you still like there's even more yield still laying out there? Is there ways that we're still learning? What are some things that you've seen up to this point? What's some ways that we can still learn in the future?
Well, I think a lot of it, and one of David's really stressors that he does in his production is plant health. He really promotes plant health. And I think that's one of the things we're really finding out to the producers who are using these biological programs that we have to offer, is that come at the end of the season, their plant health, their stalk structure, their stalk strength is still being retained at 18-19% harvest moisture.
Which that, you showed me a picture of David's field at 18-19% moisture. And really it looked like it was a field that was 30 to 40% moisture because of the green, just the overall health. It doesn't look like a plant at harvest, but whenever we can maintain the internal workings of the plant, whenever we can put the nutrients out there in a timely application, then we're able to see later on in that year, whether it be harvest, the plant still looks healthy, the plant is still viable. And that's what you're seeing a lot with working with David, correct?
Most definitely is plant health. And so we're promoting that, we're keeping that plant healthy till we get that crop harvested. So more standability, more vigorous plant, a stronger stalk. And if you're gonna, his ears weighed over 1/2 pound per ear this year. The test weight was over 64 pounds per bushel. And so if you got that heavy a ear on that stalk, you really need a really good stalk with a lot of strength to hold that crop up there.
So let's talk about a little bit of some of the particulars. Row spacing, seed population. What are some of those things that David currently does?
Well, his row spacing is 30 inches.
Okay.
And he pushed the population this year to 47,000.
47,000.
So that's really high. And so if you're going to push plant populations that high in 30-inch rows, you really need a very vigorous plant, vigorous stalk, healthy stalk, and to be able to withstand that stress within itself, putting plants that close together. If I was to do that on my farm, and I'll just tell you, I'd crash and burn because I don't have everything in order that David does on his farm. So, we have to back our populations down on our farm because we don't have everything on our farm, because we still use it for research.
And that's where we talk about the growers that are looking for progression, looking to advance. There's no way a farmer we could replicate what David did the very first year.
No.
It's been multiple years that you've been working with David. And so, you that are watching, there has to be a starting point. We've talked about replication, check work, a starting point. We have to start somewhere, whether that somewhere is 300 bushels or 285 bushels or 36-inch rows or twin rows or 30-inch rows, 40,000 population. There has to be a starting point. We have to get our hands around that, and then we have to see from there, how do we continue? How do we push the envelope? And that's kind of where David has been. He's found him a starting point. It's been 14 seasons since he's been able to now get 14 seasons later to a world record. So the starting point has to come now. So the more delay, guys may begin to say, well, I just don't know about biological. I just don't know about multiple foliar applications. I don't know about seed treatments, those types of things. We both know if it doesn't start now, things are going to progress, things are going to advance, and then you hate to say get behind the 8 ball, but that's what can happen. So you brought up a great point about knowing your soil, knowing your conditions, and not thinking, that, hey, I can replicate exactly what David did. Because it takes planning, it takes work. And that's where we're talking about the growers that are ready to take their farm to the next level, but it takes hands-on.
Sure does.
You're a grower, you're a farmer, and if you don't get out there and if you don't assess your situation of what's going on and you leave it up to a drive-by, say, well, maybe it needs some water, maybe it needs some of this, maybe it needs some of that, you're not going to be a very high-yielding, sometimes maybe not even beneficial farmer because you're not understanding what your crop is trying to tell you. We put it out to you. We challenge you. Where do you want to take your farm? Where do you want to grow? What needs to happen in the years to come for you to sustain your growing conditions? Maybe you're not happy with what you're seeing on your farm already. Maybe you feel like there's still a lot of yield left out in your farm at the end of the year into the fields. We love to have the opportunity to begin to work with you and begin to see how we can work, how we can assess the situation and partner together. We're not the only solution here, by no means. It takes a lot of water, it takes a lot of management, it takes a lot of different other variables
Right.
that we can't supply. And so we'll partner with you, we'll work with you, and as much as we can, we'll assist with what we have. And what we have is fine-tuned products, product portfolio that has been proven to work, 454 bushels per acre, a national record. We don't take the credit for that. We give the credit to God, we give the credit to David and his management, but it started 14 seasons ago.
Sure did.
So whether you're just in our first year with us, the third year with us, or you're just watching this video wondering how you can work with us, it's got to start now, it's got to start soon. So hopefully 2014, 2015, 2016, we begin to work together to find how our products can benefit you, but it's got to start somewhere. So whether it's the seed treatment, whether it's the biologicals, the foliar feeding, we thank you for watching this video. We look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much.